Here, checking in for section 2 of the audiobook, Worlds Beyond the Poles by Amadeo Giannini. Before we get started, let me make sure that we are live, loud and clear. I did get started a bit early, so you're not tripping. I am early. Please give me a thumbs up if you can see me and hear me well. I would appreciate it. And definitely do let me know, because this is a new mic I'm using here. And I have no idea how well it's going to come through on the live stream. So sounds okay, I think. But yeah, okay. So this will be section 2 of Worlds Beyond the Poles by Amadeo Giannini. Chapter 2. Oh, and by the way, let me just say, disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in this book are not necessarily my personal views and opinions. Quite frankly, I think some of the stuff mentioned in the first section is a bit wild for my taste, but I had a lot of people request this book, and it seems to be fairly well written, and it's definitely interesting, but just don't confuse, please, any of the claims in this book with my claims or assertions, because I'm just reading the book for you guys. All right. So chapter 2, The Connected Universe, Mistress of Deception. There's a quote here. "Let us remember it is the brain that sees, and the human eye is only a faulty window which shows us but an infinitesimal portion of the universe about us." Okay. And we actually, there's a figure here. So let me just show you guys this figure before we get started. I know it's not the best quality, but there's a figure that they're going to refer to. So hopefully y'all can see that figure there. Forgive the low techness here, but we're doing the best we can. Okay, so there's that figure. Figure 1 indicates the deceptions experienced in the telescopic observation of the universe. About us. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing this here, you guys. Bear with me. Okay. But it is not intended to show the true contour of the universe whole. It is meant to express only the salient features of physical continuity. It shows how all connected land and sky areas of the universe have positive continuity with the Earth. But it also shows how every sky area of the universe must deceptively appear to telescopic detection as a globular area. And that deception of globularity imposes the delusion that the areas are isolated. Connecting areas or parts of the illustration's luminous outer sky curves may be considered star areas between the so-called planets. Though the illustration shows them all more or less alike, there does exist variation in their luminous depth, but they are all areas of the luminous outer sky surface of the universe. Variations in luminous depth result from differences in intensity of gaseous sky content. Such variations, in turn, develop differences in the astronomer's spectrum and spectroscopic analysis. All luminous areas of the universe illustration are, in common with the universe it represents, observable parts of an infinitely continuous and unbroken outer sky surface. It covers underlying celestial land, water, and ice, as it covers such elements of the terrestrial. There is also shown the region of atmospheric density between land surface and the inner blue sky. The distance is the same at celestial levels as it is at terrestrial level, and the oxygen content is sufficient to sustain vegetation and life at celestial level. In the Copernican concept of planetary isolation, the sun is assumed to occupy the center of the dark stratosphere, and connecting outer sky areas of the universe are assumed to be isolated units, and they are assumed to perform a rotative movement around the sun's center of a mathematically prescribed universe subdivision known as the solar system. That solar system arrangement, which embraces the Earth, represents something of a combined celestial and terrestrial pinwheel. To make for easier comprehension of physical continuity, the pinwheel solar system center, or sun, has, in a way, been pulled out to afford it reasonable placement as a guide or leader for the entire connected universe. As the illustration shows, every previously assumed isolated area of the universe whole, including the Earth, holds its original position in the universe structure, and every area maintains its daily and yearly relation to the sun. Accordingly, the illustration shows how the land and the sky of the celestial extend to and connect with the Earth's imaginary pole points. It shows that we may move beyond the Earth without falling off the edge or falling off the ends. The following descriptive material, in conjunction with the illustration that we showed at the beginning, should afford ample guidance for comprehension of the factual universe as it was created. 1. The dark center represents the perpetually dark stratosphere surrounding the terrestrial and the celestial. It is part of the dark void of infinity wherein the universe whole was created. And that's whole WHOL, so the universe in its entirety was created. 2, the luminous outer partial disks to be observed against the stratosphere darkness represent the sky light developed over all areas of the universe. A continuity of the same blue sky we observe from land surface everywhere on the terrestrial is seen by inhabitants of every other universe area when they, as do we, look up or out from their respective land surface positions. In looking through their inner blue sky at night, they observe the luminosity of our gaseous outer sky areas in precisely the same manner which we observe their outer sky luminosity against the darkness. Since their lenses cannot be expected to penetrate through areas of our luminous skylight and detect the land under our sky, it is most likely that they have deduced as erroneously of our, and we have of their land. 3, therefore, the inner side of all outer luminous disk-like areas of the illustration may be understood to represent the familiar gaseous sky envelope observable from any terrestrial location as our particular blue sky. From all other land areas of the universe, the blue sky, likewise seen, represents the particular sky of inhabitants of such areas. Inasmuch as recent U.S. naval stratosphere photographs of outer sky areas prove them to be luminous and presenting the identical appearance of celestial areas, confirmation is had that there exists the same gaseous sky content for the celestial as is known to envelop the terrestrial. Since the luminosity of outer sky terrestrial, sorry, my eyes skipped there. I didn't lost my spot. Okay. Since the luminosity of outer terrestrial sky areas corresponds to that of outer celestial sky areas, it follows that atmospheric conditions underlying the sky envelope where our celestial cousins dwell must correspond to atmospheric conditions prevailing at terrestrial level. Thus, the inner blue sky must also correspond throughout the entire universe. Our experiments show that without the existence of an inner blue sky of gaseous content, there could be no luminous outer sky, which is an expression of sky gas to be observed over terrestrial or celestial areas. Hence, any Martians, Venusians, Jupiterians, or Liberians looking up or out from their respective land positions are, during the day, permitted to view their gaseous blue sky envelope with the same varying depth or shades of blue that we observe in our blue sky. The depth of blue will depend on atmospheric conditions prevailing at the various celestial locations at the time of observation. Further, as the celestial sky's chemical content or gaseous intensity varies from time to time and from place to place, as does the content of our sky, it produces a corresponding variation in the intensity of outer sky luminosity to be observed against the dark stratosphere by remote observers everywhere. Therefore, the inner areas of the illustration, denoting terrestrial and celestial sky as observed from land surface, should not be of a constant blue depth. By the same token, the outer sky luminosity will not be constant, but there are variations in luminous quality. As will be later shown, variations in luminous sky movement produce or accompany change of blue and luminous sky expressions. 5. At night, inhabitants of all other parts of the universe observe seemingly globular and isolated areas of our luminous outer sky in the same manner as we are permitted to their sky. As we are permitted to observe luminous, seemingly globular and isolated areas of their sky. They are permitted to see only the outer luminous expression of our sky, as we see luminous areas of their outer sky. Since their most powerful telescopes cannot penetrate through our skylight, they cannot hope to see our land or our blue sky as we see it until they arrive at our particular land position. And again, I must say this is all pretty far-fetched, but okay, we're just going to roll with it. Neither can we hope to see their land or their inner blue sky areas until we arrive on the land under their blue sky. As our most powerful telescope lenses cannot penetrate through skylight of the celestial, we have been unable to detect the land and vegetation under the luminous sky enveloping the entire celestial realm. 6. Moreover, over the luminous outer surface of our entire terrestrial sky, which we know extends unbrokenly, other dwellers of the universe are compelled to observe millions of apparently globular and therefore seemingly isolated bodies. They are all luminous sky areas, and their number would depend on the power of observing telescope lenses and other physical factors herein described. 7. Nowhere throughout the length and width of our terrestrial land and sky, or throughout the endless land and sky of the created universe, do disks, spheres, or globes actually exist, despite their seeming existence. They are entirely lens created. They represent the most striking examples of lens illusions ever known to mankind. 8. Therefore, the illustration's inner blue sky horizontal curves and outer luminous sky curves are intended to indicate the deceptions experienced in observation. Neither the Earth nor any part of the universe about the Earth curves in agreement with the deceptions of curvature here presented. We may grant such curves realism only insofar as they have been created by the lenses. No lens can escape producing a curve at the proper distance on the horizontal or the perpendicular. As previously related, the physical structure and properties of all lenses demand that the curve be created. Then the lens-created curve is accentuated by the concept into the full-bodied and isolated globe or sphere as distance from the photographed or telescopically observed area or object is increased. There is, in reality, no such curvature to the endless sky and land continuous throughout the universe. The only such curvature that might possibly exist, and which we could never hope to determine, would be that of a conceptual nature, having the universe as a whole curve in infinite time and space. Granting such a universifiable arrangement for the connected universe whole would in no way interfere with the all-important factor that the universe is connected and continuous, and that journey may be had to all areas thereof by movement on the same physical level with this earth. That indicated movement would be straight ahead, north from the North Pole and south from the South Pole. 9. Photographs taken whenever and wherever in Peru or Asia Minor or in our own Rocky Mountains in no way prove the so-called curvature of the Earth. They prove only that the utilized lenses could not avoid developing curves that have been mistakenly interpreted as applicable to the Earth's contour. The lens itself created the curvature in the same manner that the optic lens, by grace of its structure and function, creates curves and deceptive horizons within the experience of everyone. For example, does the sky really curve down and meet the water or the land where the horizon indicates that it does? We know now that it doesn't, despite appearances, because physical contact with such horizontal points proves there is no such meeting place. Does the square or U-shaped opening to a tunnel draw together as it appears to do and become globular to our sight as distance within the dark tunnel and away from the daylight at the opening is increased? Though it deceptively appears to draw together and become globular, experience has taught us that the entrance retains its original shape and size in actuality. Does not the square top of a brick chimney become deceptively globular as photographing altitude is increased directly over the chimney opening? Such deceptive appearance must be imposed by the lens. Knowledge dictates that the chimney opening doesn't actually become globular. One of the classical and most common expressions of the unavoidable deceptions ensuing from lens function is that of the two separate railroad tracks which seem to merge or meet in the distance. A very modern example of illusion resulting from lens function is presented in the flight of jet planes. As the speedy jet is observed moving on a direct horizontal course from east to west or vice versa, it must deceptively appear to be shooting up on the perpendicular, then describing a definite curve or arc as it approaches the observer. Then, as it passes overhead and recedes in the distance, it appears to be dropping down to the land surface. The jet's horizontal course remains the same from the time it was sighted on the one horizon until it was lost to view at the opposite, but the lens develops the illusion that the jet was first shooting upward, then shooting down. Nothing more vividly attests that the lens produces this curvature. These examples, plus 1,000 others that could be cited, eloquently express that all lenses are subject to the functional error of the optic lens, for all lenses were patterned after the human eye. This means that the lens itself, in drawing to a focal point, creates this illusory curve, and that curvature illusion in turn produces globular areas and objects where in fact nothing rounded or globular actually exists. Therefore, as the inner blue sky seemingly dips or curves to meet the land or the water, under the power of lens convergence, which creates our horizons, so do the luminous outer sky areas of the universe suffer the same affliction. It makes no difference if the sky area is one of 100 miles or one of 100,000 miles. As distance is increased, the original illusory curve becomes deceptively filled in with body property, and there is projected the further illusion of a completely globular and isolated area. In such manner does the universe about us become cluttered with isolated globular and spherical bodies that have no part in the structure of the universe. In the 1931 Stratosphere Ascent of Professor Auguste Piccard, the photographing camera lens produced a partial disk of the terrestrial sky area, which Piccard barely penetrated at an altitude of just 10 miles. That disk development, which was referred to as an upturned disk, was partial only because sufficient distance had not been achieved from the gaseous sky area. In the subsequent 1935 Air Corps ascent to an altitude of 14 miles, there was sufficient distance from the sky area, and the partial disk became rounded out to present the appearance of a complete disk. One may more readily understand that lens development of curves and disks if one holds in mind a picture of the first quarter or crescent moon and mentally follows its monthly course of filling in or completion to the full moon. Confirmation since 1935 of the unfailing development of the illusions described in all telescopic observations of the universe about us attests to the reality of physical continuity. Every foot of the endless celestial empire telescopically observed and astronomically designated quote-unquote stars, planets, etc., is thereby shown to be as physically connected as Figure 2 describes, without illusory curves. The celestial is shown to be as much a continuance of this Earth area as the various countries of Earth are physically connected and made continuous by the known land and water links. The terrestrial has affinity with the celestial in the same manner that the United States, The terrestrial has affinity with the celestial in the same manner that the states of these United States are affiliated with the national whole. There must deceptively appear to be physical disconnections in the universe whole, where each faultily observed celestial and terrestrial sky area, in being brought to convergence under lens functioning, seemingly becomes isolated from its neighboring area, as previously described, an inescapable condition of observation. Strange as it may seem, the necessary allowances for such a handicap of observation have never been made, because the handicap, though known application to observations at celestial level. Complete domination by the mathematical prescription of celestial mechanics, though that prescription contains no ingredients from the universe of reality, has endowed illusions developed in telescopic observation in the universe with a reality they cannot and do not possess. Therefore, we should never lose sight of the fact that the designation of celestial areas is as globular and isolated is at the best a vague assumption within the world of the astro-mathematician, rather than a creative fact within the world of things of which we are part. With further observations of Figure 1, one may realize that were one occupying any area of the illustrated universe whole, or observing any area thereof from a stratosphere position, the depicted curved and luminous outer sky areas of the terrestrial and the celestial would deceptively appear as full-bodied, isolated globular entities. This observational condition would result from the fact that when the luminous curved surface area is detected, one's mind is automatized to fill in the body proportion. In the drawing, it is not possible to show the full globularity which such curved areas impose on the mind and make for the concept of isolation. Average intelligence can readily discern that the luminous curved areas will not be connected through observation. They are always disconnected, apparently. Though connected here for illustrative purposes, observation would hold a dark area at every point of connection. Thus, would there develop the concept of their isolation. Study of the inner sky curves may serve as a guide for understanding that the lens does not conveniently prepare appearances as illustrated. The lens does just the contrary. It severs each connection. Then stratosphere darkness envelops each curved area on both sides and underneath. In so doing, the area becomes isolated to all appearances, though the inner sky curves have also been drawn as connected. The lens observing any areas of the blue sky causes it seemingly to curve down to underlying land and water. In such manner are the horizons produced. The blue sky and the outer luminous sky continue unbrokenly ad infinitum, as shown in Figure 2, but the lens must deny such realistic continuity. And I'll try to remember to put these figures as the thumbnail of this video after I get done with the stream, so that way you can reference them more easily. Life is no more than our individual concept of life. We all see and believe only that which we want to see and believe. Hence, quote unquote, primed observations are always of doubtful value, as dubious as spies. Non-existent celestial, globular, and spherical areas are clothed with reality through the capriciousness of optic lenses, aggravated by other lenses, and conceptual enlargement of the faulty image. So long as one observes luminous celestial and terrestrial sky curves produced by the lens and holds the illusory globe to be a reality, it is unlikely that anything but globes and spheres will be encountered, regardless of the power of telescopic lenses. Moreover, the assumed Earth sphere and its companion celestial pseudospheres have become so firmly fixed in mind that presentations of such spheres, which naturally show full-bodied properties, are accepted as being factually descriptive of the composition of the whole universe. Such acceptance is had in spite of the overpowering fact that no telescopic observer and no photographing cameras ever recorded realistic body proportions for any area of the universe. The lenses detected and reproduced only a disc-like surface area, which was credited with body fullness. Therefore, the glamorously portrayed Earth globe and its celestial counterparts present nothing more profound than an outstanding expression of lens error and human misconception based on that error, plus the artful embellishment of globe symbols by otherwise capable artists who likewise are under the domination of the popular misconception. Modern discovery establishes that the assumed isolation of the terrestrial from the celestial is a fallacy. The Earth's northern connecting land link with the celestial is confirmed by extensive penetration of land beyond the North Pole point of theory. In February 1947, a United States Navy Arctic Expeditionary Force under the command of Rear Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd achieved a memorable 7-hour flight over land extending beyond the northern geographic so-called center, or mathematically prescribed northern end of the Earth. That flight confirmed that there is no northern physical end to the Earth, and that the 1543 conclusions were most premature. The northern physical continuity of the Earth with celestial areas of the universe also has its counterpart in the land now known to extend beyond the South Pole. All future physical progress beyond the imaginary North Pole and South Pole points must and will lead to real land areas of the universe appearing as up or out from our present terrestrial position. We may move as Rear Admiral Byrd moved beyond the North Pole and out of the physical bounds of this realm on the same physical level as this Earth. Our movement into land areas of the universe about us need never vary from known movement in journeys from New York to Chicago, or from Boston to Hong Kong, or between whatever terrestrial points one is pleased to consider. We may fly the distance with means now at hand, or we may journey in any of the other established modes for making possible journeys from city to city or from nation to nation of the terrestrial area. Except for the vast ice barriers at the Arctic and Antarctic regions, especially at the Antarctic, we might even walk. However, early explorers found walking and dog sled movement most unsuitable transportation over the frigid polar areas. That is one of the reasons why there was no concerted early effort to peer over the top of the world, so to speak, to determine what actually exists beyond the supposed terrestrial ends. Further reason may have been that one does not perilously attempt to penetrate into a beyond which is which his concept denies. If concept has not first established the thing or condition, in this case, land beyond the poles, it cannot and does not, quote unquote, exist despite its actuality. Despite the lamentable restrictions of theory, men have persistently wondered about the Earth's extent. The earliest attempt to reach the North Pole point and to satisfy that curiosity was made by Sir Martin Frobisher of England in 1578. But the notable accomplishment of just reaching the pole point could in no manner permit determination of territory extending beyond the pole point and out of bounds of the theorized Earth globe. One is not permitted a vista of polar territory to almost unlimited horizons as one is viewing the plains of Kansas. One's determination must be based solely on the mathematical formula, which maintains that the geographic point reached is in fact the end. And though infinity extend beyond in a continuous land and water course, men would have no reason or inclination to penetrate that course if concept holds that such course does not exist. Therefore, though the space myth did not restrict movement to the polar areas of an assumed Earth ending, it did most definitely restrict movement beyond such supposed Earth ends, where men believed they would be projected into space assumed to exist beyond these ends. Hence, the awesome conjectured northern and southern space of the Copernican theory erected the identical barriers to northern and southern progress, as the obsolete Ptolemaic theory had imposed on movement east and west from the Old World prior to 1492. How fearful has been the word space. So that's the end of chapter 2. Let me see how long chapter 3 is. We might get 2 in here. Let's see. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do chapter 3. It's very short. Chapter 3. A modern Columbus seeks a Queen Isabelle. Returning to the 1927 and 28 quest of the pilgrim to whom the chapter title refers, and as press accounts of that time described him, we can review his lonely pilgrimage from the Cardinal's Brighton mansion. Along a lonely homeward course, and in the disturbed vigil of ensuing months and years, he was taunted by the Cardinal's parting words. "If it is so, the world will know it." Silently, but no less firmly, he answered their thudding echo. "Yes, my Cardinal, it is so, and by God, the world will know of it through my telling, for I will tell, through earth and hell oppose me." He could not then foresee that the combined forces of life would weave the pattern of his movements so that he must tell even though it beggar him from all worldly values and leave him outcast in the eyes of men. He was not to be consulted by the force that relentlessly drove him forward. And if he tried to escape the burden of responsibility, as try he did at times, he was mercilessly scourged by the mean expressions of man's inhumanity to man in fitting compensation for his periodic forlorn attempts to abandon his endowment. There were none in whom a dreamer so endowed could confide. Alone, he was compelled to chart the forsaken pilgrimage, leading to his avowed goal of universal dissemination of his work and its ultimate confirmation. Where would he go? To whom could he and would he divulge the devastating secrets culled from the hidden depths beyond accepted standards of perception? In any really determined quest for light, a beacon, be it ever so feeble, throws its ray to guide the seeker's course. Hence, there was brought to that early pilgrim the name of one, though serving the interests of the traditional and the entrenched, was by no means lacking in perception. To him, in the District of Columbia, the quest was conducted. Arriving at the national capital, the pilgrim hastened to the offices of Science Service, where he met with one of the few open-minded men of science. With such open-mindedness, he was able to perceive beyond the established pattern of cosmological values. Dr. Edwin E. Slosson, then the fearless director of the Science Service, patiently listened to a dramatic recital without parallel which described how one might journey straight ahead from the supposed Earth ends to arrive at the celestial land areas, how movement up is always relative, and apparent up points to the universe would be attained by moving straight ahead in a manner comparable to the western sailing of Christopher Columbus to go to the east. Dr. Slosson was not an astronomer, nor was he afraid of space phantoms. However, though he fully grasped the import of sensational disclosures, he was obliged to counsel, Giannini, you will not find 10 open-minded men of science throughout this entire country. Despite such sincere counsel, 10 men of tolerance were thereafter ardently sought. It mattered little to the pilgrim whether they bore the label of scientist or something else. If they existed and could assist in the cause, they should be found. Zeal, born of relentless obsession, would tolerate no cessation of the quest, which was expected to develop the means for adequate disclosure and ultimate confirmation of perception's extraordinary findings. He realized early at an early date in the pilgrimage that expensive stratosphere ascent and elaborately equipped expeditions beyond the North Pole and the South Pole would be required for essential confirmation of his disclosures. And with such realization, he was painfully aware that he was a dismal pauper, according to this world's standards of values. He had no way of knowing then that his utmost wish would be gratified through the physical initiative of others who would see to it that condemnation would be developed. I'm not sure what that word is. Connotation would be developed. I'm not sure. It's smudged. The required stratosphere ascent and expeditions would be made. Though he would have willingly risked his life in a pioneering stratosphere ascension to procure proof and in a dangerous journey to land he knew continued beyond the North Pole or the South Pole, his earnest appeals for adequate financing of such projects fell upon deaf ears. Never relinquishing the idea of immediate physical confirmation of his disclosures and the manner of its attainment, he journeyed to California, where, at the California Institute of Technology, he met that institution's president, Dr. Robert Andrews Millikan. He believed that Dr. Millikan, who had then recently accomplished isolation of an electron and was acclaimed the world's outstanding physicist, would be endowed with the open-mindedness necessary for a program developing confirmation of the extraordinary disclosures. The famous physicist graciously afforded the hearing that presented pertinent features of the original treatise, Physical Continuum, also known as the Giannini concept. There was no doubt concerning Dr. Millikan's interest. Yet his counsel and only contribution to the cause was expressed in the following, quote, Giannini, It is your work, and only you can give it. Since words cannot confirm you, words cannot deny you. My best wishes for your success." His words in that remote summer of 1928 were certainly friendly and well-intended, but to the lonely and unaided pilgrim, they held a dismal echo of the preceding summer's dictum from the cardinal's mansion. If it is so, the world will know of it. If it is so, the world will know of it. Giannini, you will not find 10 open-minded men of science in this entire country. Giannini, it is your work, and only you can give it. In his youthful enthusiasm, he became scornful of the lack of constructive initiative from arbiters of the established order of all things scientific. Throughout the weary pilgrimage of years, 1,001 clutching tentacles of despair sought throttling hold upon his spirit. Alone, with the soothing balm of Arizona's silent and spiritual desert nights, where he had temporary sanctuary, but often whispered a devout prayer of attunement to that inscrutable force which guided a dreamer's destiny. Padre Mio, show me the way. Then it would seem that the myriad beacons of the desert sky would direct his course back to California. Be that fabulous land of the setting sun, where there seemed to remain some remnant of the pioneering spirit in keeping with the broader horizons. There, where miracles of nature's vast performance tax credulity, it was believed there might be less of that finely developed cynicism infesting eastern metropolises, whose lights had fled where Garland's dead. Whose lights had fled where Garland's dead, and where dreams had been long verboten. It was hoped that there might be found the sordid but necessary means for dreams' fulfillment through the cooperation of the master financier, Amadeo Peter Giannini, who had then recently endowed the Giannini Agricultural Foundation at the University of California with $2.5 million. Whatever his hopes may have been, it was enough that the land of the Golden Gate had beckoned. The pilgrim proceeded to San Francisco. Then, in a rapid series of events during the remainder of 1928, his work was expounded before faculty members of the University of California at Berkeley, at Santa Clara, University in Santa Clara's bountiful Valley of Orchards, and the San Jose State Teachers College, at the United States Naval Observatory, on Mere Island, and at the Archbishop of San Francisco's headquarters, where His Excellency Archbishop Edward Hanna presided. Little time was lost in an itinerary that subsequently took him to Los Angeles, where his treatise, Physical Continuum, harshly invaded the University of Southern California and at the University of California at Los Angeles. It was later heard by prominent representatives of Hearst organization, who were then preparing for historical Hearst-Wilkins Antarctic expedition of 1928. His unquenchable ardor was manifested in every quarter where his cause might be advanced. He was heard in restricted academic circles, as well as in weekly lectures from LA radio station KFI. He was invited to accompany Captain Sir George Hubert Wilkins and Alan Lockheed, president of the Lockheed Corporation, to a select meeting at the Breakfast Club in Burbank, where his cause was heard. Wherever it was considered that the work's interest might be served, he was to be found. It is understandable that a press dispatch of that time described him as, quote, "this modern Columbus who seeks a Queen Isabelle somewhere in America." though a queen might have possessed the means to equip a fitting expedition for land discovery beyond the poles or provide funds for the required stratospheric ascents, no queen, duchess, or baroness ventured forth to ease a modern dreamer's burden. It appeared that modern queens and lesser members of nobility were too sophisticated to be intrigued by a dreamer's announcement of new worlds to conquer. However, the dreamer and the dream did not perish for want of queens, duchesses, or other noble women. It was evident that a more alert nobility was to be found in San Francisco, for it was there that a ranking member of the church nobility, in the person of Archbishop Edward Hanna, made possible a hearing of the pilgrim's work by the faculty of the University of Santa Clara. The famed Jesuit, the Reverend Jerome S. Richard, S.J., who was popularly known as the Padre of the Rains, as a result of his accurate weather predictions, was perhaps the most interested member of the faculty audience. His interest would rightfully surpass that of the pure academician because he was an atomic physicist and seismologist. When the hearing was over, Professor Rickard exclaimed with an undisguised enthusiasm, "Giannini, if you succeed in proving your concept of physical continuity, it will represent the most realistic physical continuity of the universe within the history of man." Professor Rickard's teachings held that there existed a constant play of energy between all assumed quote-unquote bodies and particles of the created universe whole. However, his dignified membership in the Order of Theorists, adhering to the supposition of 1543, did not deny him discernment that the 400-year-old theory failed to provide an answer to the universe riddle. The San Francisco Call of that time featured an exclusive interview with the pilgrim, whose extraordinary disclosures had been made at Santa Clara University. The press presentation contained the pilgrim's photograph with that of the Australian explorer, Captain Sir George Hubert Wilkins. There was also a likeness of the ancient astronomer Copernicus, reproduced from an old woodcut. The feature dealt with Sir Hubert's then forthcoming Antarctic expedition to discover unknown land beyond the South Pole Point. Yet, even that timely and most sensational presentation failed to bring forth a queen or a duchess or even a lowly baroness to lend oil for a dreamer's turbulent and engulfing waters of a workaday application to his dream's dissemination. As there was a notable dearth of queens and their noble retinue, kings of finance, and members of their noble American order were also in absentia. No subsidy was to be had from the famous banking house of Giannini, though its master, Amadeo Peter Giannini, had been given personal knowledge of the dream's import. However, it must in fairness be acknowledged that his friendly reception and his expressed willingness to cooperate in other than a financial way held a measure of aid which was perhaps greater than any financial disbursement for the cause. Nor was there any assistance from the vast storehouse of private funds for the express purpose of advancing science in all its branches, regardless of scope. The overlords of that storehouse expressed the utmost skepticism concerning the land which a dreamer knew existed. One of the few cooperative courtesies of the time was extended by the United States Navy through its senior professor of mathematics, who was also director of the U.S. Naval Observatory on Mare Island, California. He graciously permitted observations to be made with naval equipment. Though more substantial and direct aid was then withheld by the Naval Research Bureau, there was an extravagance of indirect aid which was never anticipated. This volume attempts to describe the sensational accomplishments of record since 1928 by the Naval's Technical and Explorative Divisions and the Naval Research Bureau. Though the interests mentioned here were perhaps rightfully reticent of openly assisting in view of seemingly fantastic aspects of the physical continuum before confirmation, it was also rightful for their attitude to be resented by one who, as yet, had no awareness of the magnitude of his disclosures. To him, they were of utmost simplicity. Therefore, it may be that in the sublime, unfathomable order of things, this particular dreamer was, even against his wish, safeguarded from the dangers attending his desired stratosphere ascent and hoped for flights beyond the poles. Had he then possessed knowledge of coming events, he might not have considered it so imperative that he personally perform what he considered necessary for confirmation of his revolutionary disclosures. He lacked such knowledge, and the factor of personal safety never even entered his calculations. He sought all possible understanding of balloon construction and operation, and he solicited the cost of balloon material for the stratosphere ascent he was positive would develop proof for his unorthodox claims. He determined the cost of stratospheric balloon equipment from the Thompson Balloon Company of Aurora, Illinois. He received the promise of Captain Ashley C. McKinley, United States Navy retired, to pilot the ascent. Captain McKinley was then an aerial photographer who had been an expert Navy balloonist. Then his earnest petition for necessary funds to procure equipment was denied by no fewer than 4 prominent millionaires to whom he had personally appealed and who had previously expressed intention to cooperate. Thus, until 1935, he persisted in forlorn endeavor to have his own stratosphere ascent financed. At the Transamerica Corporation in New York City, he again met with the famous A.P. Giannini, whose problems of that time left him unreceptive to the stratospheric project. His devotion to the cause actuated a journey to the Chicago World's Fair, where he consulted with Dr. Frank Moulton, director of the science division, for a stratosphere ascension to be launched from Soldiers Field. However, it developed that Commander Settle, United States Navy, had already been assured of Chicago Daily News support for his stratosphere ascension. Therefore, the Pilgrim denied his own ascent and fully convinced that Commander Settle would not achieve sufficient altitude for photographic proof, took advantage of every opportunity to influence others who were favored by organization financing and who might be able to procure requisite confirmation. It was with such in prospect that he arranged an invitation to inspect the Army Air Corps stratosphere ascension equipment at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. And it was there that he directed Captain Albert W. Stevens, USA, to achieve a 14-mile altitude if it was physically possible. He then knew that such altitude would be required for photographic confirmation of terrestrial skylight and the illusory, globular, and isolated appearance of any sky area photographed. In the case of polar expeditions, to confirm his disclosure of then unknown land existent and extending beyond the pole points. It was considered imperative that some known explorer of polar areas be convinced of the reality of physical continuity. To that end, he determined to present the subject to Captain Sir George Hubert Wilkins, who at that time, September 1928, was about to embark upon the Antarctic expedition sponsored by the Hearst newspaper interests. So that's end of section 3. We're going to end that here. You guys, thanks so much for watching, and we'll continue this ASAP. Love you guys. We'll see you very soon. Bye now.